And I think food has a very strong impact in terms of the environmental footprint. And everyone is now starting to pay attention to this footprint. And I think it's just a matter of time. And we see it also happening in front of our eyes right now. It's a matter of time of eliminating animals in our dish.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leometech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Meet Leonardo Marcovitz, the founder of More Foods. After finishing high school in Venezuela, Leonardo moved to the USA to study biomedical engineering, a degree he pursued as it delivered on his ambitions and cravings for multidisciplinary fields. This interest in varied topics would then become evident by his co-founding of startups in different fields, which include medical devices and management software for groups of farmers. His underlying driver has always been a desire to somehow do good. Then he founded More Foods over 2 years ago when he became obsessed with the idea that we can serve people delicious meats without the need to use animals. Meet Leonardo. Fascinating career. Besides what you've been doing the last 2 years with More Foods and Food Alternative and Meat Alternative, your previous work, I really have to understand this journey from working in medical, whether it be device to train nurses or with pressure med, and later on agricultural cooperatives, and then being a vendor acquisition manager of Billion Vegans, transitioning to food tech. It feels like you've been, really at the forefront of some of the most, revolutionizing industries today, whether it be specifically medical or with food. And I don't usually meet people that work at the forefront of these two. How did that happen? How did this transition happen for you? And take me even back before how you got into working in medtech.
Sure. Great question. So I studied biomedical engineering. I'm originally from Venezuela, from Caracas. And when I finished high school, I moved to the States, and there I studied biomedical engineering. And that's the first clue as to all the other things that I did later on, that you mentioned yourself, that it's quite varied in different things. And the reason I study biomedical engineering is because you have a lot of different fields within that study. So you have biology, chemistry, physics, mechanics, and many different fields. So I'm quite curious person. And when I finished the university, then I already had a business, which we started to make devices actually to help train nurses. That was the first business that I had, and then I had some activities related to real estate. And then I've had many other activities. One of them was a medical device, a startup in the medical device arena. It was a device to help to detect a specific parameter in intensive care units. This parameter at the time wasn't able to detect it continuously, and what we did is that we figured out how to make a machine that could measure it continuously. So it's similar to like when you measure the heart rate or the blood oxygen concentration in an intensive care unit. That's important to understand the patient's condition. And what we did is that we did a similar device, but for something called intra-abdominal pressure. And then later on, the next startup was, you're right, it's unrelated. It's agriculture. So we built software for agricultural cooperatives. And there what we saw is we saw an opportunity. We saw that there's, especially for certain crops, like if you're talking about, let's say, cacao, coffee, and different crops, these crops are produced mostly by small farmers, hundreds of thousands of farmers that work under a cooperative model. So what we did is we built a software solution that would allow them all to connect to this cooperative and to help manage all their activities.
And so what is it? How did that jump happen from working on intensive care units to working in agricultural cooperatives? I understand the technology piece that is bridging the gap, but But what happened, for you personally that made this leap?
So again, there's the common denominator is also trying to do good,
Right.
and so the one of the first things was so the medical devices and biomedical engineering. This is related to it's doing good in a very direct manner, and then like after that journey and that startup, I realized that I was still interested in doing something that I thought okay would do somehow good, and the opportunity to help small farmers to help to organize their activities was something that seemed quite interesting, and this is how we jumped into this.
I love the common denominator, and let's jump to food tech and where we are today. Share with me your personal relationship to food tech and how you see food tech as an entrepreneur for a second. How, if you're looking at the world and you're looking at a vision of food, where are we and where do you think we're going to go to in terms of food tech?
I think that the world realizes not just in food that there's a lot of the products that we produce, the price of the externalities. So basically, the costs related to the resources used and also the output, the let's say the contaminants produced and the greenhouse emissions produced are not taken into account historically it's in the price of products. And I think food has a very strong impact in terms of the environmental footprint, and everyone is now starting to pay attention to this footprint. And I think it's just a matter of time. And we see it also happening in front of our eyes right now. It's a matter of time of eliminating animals in our dish. And the reason for that, one of the reasons is because of this consciousness of the externalities and the outside factors. Now when you buy a ticket to fly from one city to another city, most airlines ask you, do you wish to pay to offset your CO2 emissions? That happens a lot of times when you buy an airline ticket, and I think that this is just a sign of like seeing that the people are more aware and companies are more aware, and so the future is really eliminating the use of animal. More than 15% of greenhouse emissions in the world come from animal production, and so this is a great way to help meet our goals in terms of CO2 emissions in the next few years. It's by reducing and eliminating the use of animals in the food system.
Fantastic. And so we agree.
Yeah.
We agree on a brighter world where we were able to eliminate these 50% of the emissions that are coming as a result of the supply chain of manufacturing and distribution of meat. Now, how do you build a company that is good and is successful and is making a positive impact in this domain? We have a lot of companies that are emerging in this domain. Where are the different interesting places that an entrepreneur like yourself can come in and make an impact in this vertical?
So basically, noticing that most of the company that there is this opportunity to change our food distribution and our food items, the products that we eat, in order to meet some of the goals of the environment and the world. Look, food is something very emotional. It's something that we're used to eating. A lot of us eat animal products because we grew up with that and its habits, and there are certain characteristics and qualities to the products that we eat that are marvelous. And I think now with technology and the understanding that we have in food and food technology, there's a great opportunity to look at those items that we really like, to look at the qualities of those items, for example, of a piece of beef or chicken, etc., to understand what are some of the qualities. So, for example, the juiciness or the tenderness, the chewiness to it, to look at those qualities that we love. And instead of using those animal ingredients and products, to use plant-based ingredients in order to create those products. I think right now we're at a very interesting place because of the knowledge that we have on how to use those plant-based ingredients. And there's many plant-based ingredients that are to be explored and haven't been explored. And that's what, by the way, is really I'm really passionate about. Is like most of the products in the market are using for the meat alternative market are using three main ingredients, and that's soy protein, pea protein, and seitan. The soy protein and the seitan are major allergens, and they have a somewhat negative perception. I don't believe that the perception is correct, but a lot of people believe this. And the pea protein has a somewhat strong off flavor, which means it needs to be quite processed. And so I think those ingredients are great, and I don't have anything against that. But I think there's so many ingredients in the world that can be explored. So, for example, some of the ingredients that we explore are the side streams from the edible oil industry. So, what we do at More Foods is we saw all these ingredients we call them castaway ingredients. So, things that other companies in the food industry are not using. And we see a great opportunity to use those in order to create these meat alternative products that maybe, I don't know if you had a chance to look at in our website, or we have pictures in other places. So, it's kind of funny or interesting to understand that so I'll explain a little bit about the process. So you have these side streams. So you have, for example, sunflower oil, right? So there's about 32 million tons of sunflower oil that are produced every year. And what happens is you take the seed, companies and industrial companies press the seed, the oil comes out of the seed, and then you have this leftover castaway material. And what we do at More Foods is we figure out how to use these leftover ingredients, or if I would rephrase it, I would say these castaway ingredients, in order to take them from the extra product from these industries to creating final products.
Right. If we're looking for a second to understand why there is a discrepancy of products that are being used, because I think it's an important piece of the conversation here, because you're outlining a thesis saying there's all these different ingredients that we can leverage that will make for better meals, more sustainable, a great business. Why is it that the three ingredients that you mentioned before, are they at the forefront? Are they the cheapest? Are they the most easy to get? Are they the most known? Why did we converge on these three main ingredients that you were talking about?
Sure. So some of it makes some logical sense, and I'll go into it, and some of it is just historical. Some things just happen historically, and then a whole industry is based on that. So for example, soy is the most prevalent. Okay, soy is an amazing crop. It's really high in protein. It has a balanced amino acid, and that's also one of the reasons why it's used extensively in the cattle industry and in the animal food, and it's used for animal feed. And it's rather cheap to produce. And by the way, that's a crop that also oil is extracted from it. So there's soy oil, and so because the animal feed industry is such a large industry, it's multiple times bigger than the food industry for humans, like the quantities, the volumes of food. So that was a natural direction to go into to try to figure out how you could maybe modify or what could you do with these side streams from the soya oil and also from the cattle industry in order to create foods for products. So this is for soy, and then for seitan, it has roots. It comes initially from Asia, and but seitan, I don't know if most people are aware of this. It's basically the protein component of wheat. So again, wheat is one of the largest crops in the world. So because it's such a large crop, it's relatively inexpensive, and it's also quite available. And it also produces a pretty nice texture, the wheat. So those are the soy and the seitan, and then you have the pea protein. The pea protein is relatively new in the game. So here's again, and by the way, the pea protein is interesting because initially it kind of came from a similar story of a side stream or a castaway ingredient. So in Asia, the carbohydrates. So they take the peas and they extract the protein to have the carbohydrates, and then they make things like pastas and noodles. Okay, from this. So then they started to have the protein side streams, okay? And they started to explore with it. And now a lot of industries are exploring it. But it's so interesting because so for example, in Asia, the protein is a side stream, okay? And in the West, right now, because of the meat alternative industries, for example, Beyond Meat uses pea protein. There's many companies that are setting up and have set up to extract the protein, and the kind of the carbohydrates are a side stream. So it's quite interesting, this side stream thing. Even though we live in the year 2022, there's still informational gaps, and you have these differences in what can be used in which way.
Besides the technology and the innovativeness of what you're talking about, then there's the consumer side, right? You're creating a product that consumers need to love and need to want to purchase. So tell me a little bit about More Foods as a company and sort of what your strategy is in terms of the actual product that you're creating, and then who the customer is and how you're getting to that customer.
Yeah, sure. So in most of the world, especially if we look at, for example, to give you a number in the Western world, there's the numbers are normally above 30% of the population that fit into this category that we call flexitarians, which is basically what it means is more than 30% of the population is looking to reduce their meat consumption for different reasons, whether they have concern about the environment or about animal welfare or about their health. There's different reasons for that. And so this is our target audience at this stage of the company. And they're looking for things that are clean label. Clean label means that there's nothing on the label that sounds strange to them. And they're also looking for short list of ingredients because, again, when people see a very long list of ingredients, they sometimes assume that it's highly processed. And for ingredients that they recognize and sound familiar to them. And so we hit the nail in the head with all these concerns that people may have. So we make a product which is clean label, has short list of ingredients, and we use ingredients that, in fact, are even considered superfoods. The two major protein sources are in our food product are, the first one is pumpkin seed flour, and the second one is sunflower seed flour. So yeah.
Amazing. And in terms of the go-to market and the actual products that you're creating, what is that process like?
Sure. In terms of you mean the process? Well, I'll explain. Okay, so the pipeline now that we have is we have a product which is more like a beef type of product. Okay, in terms of the texture and the appearance. And with this product, we already can scale. We can produce in a large scale, and we already started sales here in Israel, in Tel Aviv. We have multiple chains of restaurants that started using our products, and so because we produce this meat, we can cut it into different form factors. So right now we have something which is more like a pulled meat, and then we also have minute steak, and we have also these chunks, More Foods chunks, and we're working on different types of cuts. This is like unique know-how in itself. So this is one form of like how we're expanding into the future, but there's many things that can be done. So for example, you have the form factors, and then if you just zoom in into one specific form factor, you can flavor it in different ways. So, let's say we go with the chunks. The chunks can be like Indian curry, or they can be, for example, Mexican dish, or, a variety of different cuisines. So we really can develop a lot of products from a specific cut. And then looking into the future, we make other products like more similar to pork meat, and then lamb meat, and then various others.
Now, in terms of there's obviously different strategies that you can also go. There's the direct to consumer. There's the more the B2B side with the restaurants that you're talking about. As you're mapping out all these different options, and I'm sure that this is an ongoing thinking process. What is why did you choose to go through more the restaurants versus more the direct to consumer route?
Sure. The food service means like restaurants, catering, coffee shops, etc. The reason that we went in this direction is only a momentary decision. What I mean is this is the go-to-market strategy. It's the initial way to launch the products into our market. And that's because we can, it's quicker to start entering the market. The marketing expenses are lower. And we can see how the restaurants are using our products, and it's a two-way street. We learn from them, and they learn from us how the product can be cooked in various cuisines, and this gives us knowledge and information on eventually when we're going to reach the retail segment. We'll know what type of flavors people really like, and what type of cuts they really like, and many other details.
So essentially leveraging the ability of the restaurants as sort of distributors and feedback mechanisms to get a quick feedback loop to be able to improve on the product. And then once you are ready to continue with other verticals, you have enough of the feedback to understand, okay, this is actually a product we've reached product market fit. So you're not just looking for a product market fit with the selling to the restaurants, you're also looking for them to help you reach a product market fit to the end consumers, which obviously are at the end the people who are consuming this, and just a really interesting journey all around, and food tech and meat tech and alternatives, and I love the way that you're looking at the different ways of creating the alternative sources of meat and protein that are non-traditional, and finding the differentiation at the end, looking towards the northern star of a world that we all agree we should be at. And now it's a question of who are the players that are going to be enablers for that. And it sounds like More Foods is positioned to have a significant part in it. And Leonardo, I really want to thank you for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.